I've never been kicked out of a birthday party I helped plan. But then again, I've never really been part of this family. My name's Talia Green. I'm 30 now. And this story's about the moment I stopped trying to earn a place that was never mine to begin with. I grew up in Salem, Oregon. My mom died when I was 5 from an aneurysm, one of those sudden things. I don't remember her laugh, but I remember how quiet our house became after she was gone. Dad remarried 2 years later to a woman named Deborah. She was polished, wealthy, already had 2 kids of her own, both younger than me, and came with this air of curated perfection. We moved into her home, or more accurately, their home. A sprawling craftsman with white columns and a koi pond in the backyard. It was beautiful, and it never felt like mine. At first, Deborah played nice. She took me shopping, told me to call her mom if I wanted to. I tried. God, I tried. I folded laundry when no one asked. I got straight A's. I stayed out of the way. But the cracks showed early. Her daughter, Valerie, once poured nail polish into my backpack. When I told Deborah, she smiled and said, "Girls will be girls, Talia. Don't be so sensitive." Her son, Max, refused to sit next to me at dinner for a year. By the time I was 16, the message was clear. I was welcome, but I didn't belong. Deborah had this mantra, family first, no matter what. But family never included me. I was always Talia, from his first marriage. My dad didn't see it, or maybe he chose not to. He was the type to fix leaky faucets and mow the lawn, but avoid emotional messes at all costs. When I brought it up once, he sighed and said, "Deborah means well. Just keep doing your best." So I did, for another 15 years. Fast forward to last fall. Valerie was turning 25. She'd just gotten engaged, and Deborah was planning a surprise party at the house. I offered to help. Bought decorations, helped her choose a caterer, even baked a lemon cake from scratch. Valerie's favorite. Deborah acted gracious. Said, "That's thoughtful of you, Talia." I should have known. The night of the party, I showed up a little early with the cake. The house was glowing with string lights. A jazz trio played in the corner. Everything was picture perfect. Except me. I stepped into the foyer and Deborah spotted me. She didn't smile. She didn't even frown. Just tightened. She walked up like she was about to scold a waiter who'd brought the wrong wine. "Sweetheart," she said quietly, "this party is for family. I think it's best if you don't stay." I laughed. Thought she was joking. "I helped plan this, Deborah. I made Valerie's cake." "You weren't invited," she cut in. "Valerie needs space. She's overwhelmed." Behind her, Valerie looked away. Max didn't even look up from his drink. I stood there holding that stupid cake while everyone around me sipped champagne. I opened my mouth to say something. Anything. But my dad stepped forward from the crowd, and the look in his eyes broke me. He wasn't angry. He wasn't surprised. He just looked tired. Like this was inevitable. Like he agreed. He didn't say a word. So I turned, walked out with the cake still in my hands, and sat in my car with it on my lap for 20 minutes. I didn't cry. Not yet. But later that night, after midnight, I got the call. Dad had fallen down the stairs and was unconscious. Head trauma. ICU. They were asking for next of kin. I raced to the hospital. I beat Deborah there. They asked if I was authorized to sign for emergency surgery. I said I was his daughter. When Deborah finally arrived, soaked in rain and fury, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "She's not his legal next of kin. She's just his stepdaughter." And then she refused to sign. That's the moment I realized this wasn't neglect. It was abandonment. And it was happening in real time. I stood in that hospital corridor like a damn extra in someone else's tragedy. Rain was still clinging to my coat. My shoes squeaked with every shaky step. And somewhere beyond that sliding ER door, my dad was dying. And Deborah was arguing with a nurse about parking validation. The attending came back with a clipboard and grim eyes. "His intracranial pressure's rising. We need consent for immediate surgery. He looked at me. I'm his daughter, I said. I'll sign whatever you need. But before the pen touched paper, Deborah's voice sliced through the hallway. She's not his daughter. Not legally. I'm his wife. And she has no authority here. The doctor hesitated. Ma'am, do you object to the surgery? She shrugged. I don't see the point in putting him through all that. He wouldn't want to be a vegetable. I turned to her, stunned. He's not even 59. He just needed a damn railing installed. What are you doing? But she just looked at me like I was being dramatic at a brunch. This is not your call, she said, perfectly calm. This is a family matter. I wanted to scream. I was the one who sat by him when he got his knee replaced. I was the one who helped him cancel credit cards when he got scammed last year. Where the hell was Valerie when he couldn't lift a paint can last spring? Where was Max when he fell asleep with the stove on? But none of that mattered now, because they had a marriage license. And I had... What? A birthday card he signed in cursive? The surgeon pulled me aside gently. If no authorized family member signs, he said, we'll have to wait for a court order or hope he stabilizes. And if he doesn't? He didn't answer. Hours passed. I sat in the waiting room staring at a vending machine I didn't even have quarters for. No one said a word to me. Not Deborah. Not Valerie when she finally showed up in her silk pajamas. Not Max, who looked like he hadn't even brushed his damn teeth. They sat together, scrolling their phones. And I sat across the room, alone, watching the man who raised me slip away through a window I wasn't allowed to open. At 3:17 a.m., a nurse came out with her face too composed to be hopeful. I'm sorry, she said. He didn't make it through the night. Deborah sniffled politely. Valerie hugged her. Max asked if they could go home now. No one looked at me. No one ever looked at me. I drove home in silence. That lemon cake from Valerie's party was still in the fridge. I threw it out without taking the foil off. A few days later, the funeral was scheduled. At a church I'd never been to. On a day I wasn't consulted about. They asked me if I wanted to speak, as if I were some distant cousin. I'm good, I said. Wouldn't want to overstep. Deborah wore a black hat with a veil. She looked like an actress in an old noir movie. Max nodded off during the eulogy. Valerie checked her phone twice during the service. I didn't cry. I'd done my morning in a waiting room chair under fluorescent lights while they discussed estate lawyers. Then came the final blow. 3 weeks after the funeral, I got a letter from Deborah's attorney. It said, in cold legal language, that I was being asked to vacate the storage unit my dad had rented. Apparently, Deborah had inherited everything. House, savings, personal belongings. The unit, too. There was no mention of me in his official will. I called the facility and begged for access, just for an afternoon to grab my childhood things, my dad's guitar, some old photo albums. The manager said I'd have to talk to Deborah. So I did. I called her. She picked up on the second ring and sounded like I'd interrupted her massage. I just want a few things, I said, my voice raw. His guitar, the old photo albums. That's it. She was quiet for a beat, then said, if he wanted you to have them, Talia, he would have left them to you. Then she hung up. That's when I knew something was off. Not just cruel, wrong, because I knew he'd written something. A note, a draft. He'd told me once, months ago. Don't worry, kiddo. I've got it all written down in case anything happens. But it wasn't in the official will, and something told me Deborah didn't just forget to include it. So I did what I hadn't done in years. I drove out to his old cabin in the woods. Half finished, barely furnished, and long forgotten by Deborah's wine and cheese crowd. I brought gloves, a flashlight, and zero expectations. And under the floorboard in his workroom, just beneath a loose plank he once told me not to step on, I found it. A folder, a letter, and a signature. The cabin still smelled like sawdust and wet pine. I hadn't been there in over a year. Dad used to joke that it was his retirement escape plan. half built, half forgotten. But I remembered the room, and I remembered the floorboard he always warned me not to step on. It took me 10 minutes to find it, right near the back window, a loose plank under the workbench. My hands were shaking when I pried it up. There it was, a manila folder, a little warped from dampness. No labels, no names, just quiet weight. Inside, a typed letter dated 4 months ago, a handwritten note addressed to Talia, 2 bank statements, and a copy of a different will, one with my name on it. I sat down right there on the cold wood floor and read everything. The typed letter was his, legal but still warm. It said that he wished to leave his personal effects and the cabin to me, his only daughter. That phrase alone made my chest seize. The bank statements were joint accounts, him and me, opened quietly, balances modest but real. Then came the handwritten note. If you're reading this, it means things went sideways. I'm sorry. I meant to file everything. I just didn't want to start another fight with Deborah. But this is yours, kiddo. You've been more family than anyone. Keep the cabin. Keep your head up. Don't let them rewrite who you were to me. I cried. Not the graceful kind of crying. Ugly, shaking sobs that hollow you out. And then, when I'd finally steadied my breathing, a thought hit me like a punch to the ribs. If this letter was real, Deborah had to have known. She knew, and she hid it. I called Dad's lawyer the next morning. Well, his former lawyer. He sounded surprised to hear from me. Told me the official will had been updated a year ago, cutting me out entirely. But when I mentioned the letter and the alternate will, he went very, very quiet. I always wondered, he said. He seemed conflicted the last time we spoke. I asked if the will I found could be used in court. He said, if you have the original and can prove it wasn't forged, yes. It won't override the filed one, but it will raise questions, especially if there's a pattern of coercion. That's when the pit in my stomach opened wide, because Deborah didn't just change the will. She made sure he couldn't change it back, and I had to prove it. I started digging, pulled phone records, bank statements, called the facility where Dad had rehab after his hip surgery last year. At first, no one wanted to talk. Privacy rules, they said, but I kept asking. Nicely, persistently. And eventually, a nurse named Carla called me back. Talia, right? Yes. You're the one who used to bring that blueberry tea? My throat caught. Yeah, I whispered. He talked about you. A lot. Just thought you should know. I asked her if she remembered anything off about Deborah, the will, any visits. There was a pause. Then, well, there was one thing. A guy came by once, said he was a notary. Deborah and your dad had a big argument afterward. She told him he was confused and not to bring up documents unless she approved them first. What kind of documents? She wouldn't let me see, but he was holding a file. Yellow, legal-sized. My heart pounded. A yellow file, like the one I had. I hung up, hands cold. Then my email pinged. It was from an anonymous address. No name, just a link and 5 words. You should see this footage. I shouldn't have clicked it, but I did. It was security camera footage from Dad's hospital room, dated 2 nights before he died. There was no sound, just silent footage. Dad in the bed. Weak, tubes, barely awake. Deborah walked in with a clipboard. She said something. He shook his head, barely but clearly. She shoved the clipboard toward him. He turned his head away. She tried again. And then she pulled the pen from his hand and signed the paper herself, with his name. That's when I dropped the phone. It hit the floor and I didn't even care, because everything I feared had just played out in grainy black and white. He'd tried to stop her. He said no, and she did it anyway. He trusted her, and she used that trust to erase me. If you've ever had someone rewrite your place in the world like that, If you've ever felt invisible in a family you tried so hard to belong to, please tell me I'm not the only one. I don't even want revenge. I just want someone to say, yeah, that was real. That happened to you. And it wasn't okay. I didn't sleep the night I saw that footage. Just kept replaying it in my head. Deborah forging my dad's signature, her calm expression like she was approving a grocery list. I thought I'd feel rage. But what hit me harder was clarity. She'd stolen his choice. Stolen mine. And it was time to take something back. First, I called Dad's former lawyer. Told him everything. He didn't even sound surprised. She always had a way of persuading people, he muttered. He walked me through the basics. Probate freeze, chain of evidence, video admissibility. Then he said, if you really want to rattle them, don't go to court yet. Let them walk into it. That's when the idea came. See, Deborah and her kids were planning one last trip to the cabin to collect personal items, according to a request they filed with the estate lawyer. I was copied on the email. By accident, I'm sure. They still didn't know I'd found Dad's hidden will. They still thought I was grieving, powerless, licking wounds in silence. So I stayed silent. But I was done being powerless. I contacted a home security company that day. The cabin was still technically unresolved property, so I hired a third-party firm to install discrete cameras, motion-activated, night vision, audio. I didn't need to catch them doing anything illegal. I just needed to catch them being themselves. On the day of their visit, I drove to a friend's place out by the coast and set up my laptop. The feed loaded. 3 cameras. Front porch, kitchen, living room. At 1:08 p.m., their SUV pulled up. Deborah got out first, in heels. Of course. Max and Valerie followed, both in black like they were shooting a Levi's ad for grief. They let themselves in with the old key. I smiled. Good. Walk into the trap. They wandered around the cabin like it was a showroom. Max started boxing up tools from Dad's garage wall. Valerie took down a framed photo of my mom, the only photo of her we had left, and said, this would look cool in the guest bathroom. I felt my stomach twist. Then Deborah entered the living room and spotted it. The letter. I'd placed it on the mantel. Folded, handwritten, inside an envelope labeled, for my family. It was bait, and she bit. She opened it slowly, read the first line. Her face paled. What is it? Max asked. She didn't answer, just kept reading. Then she handed it to Valerie. Valerie's lips moved as she read aloud. This letter serves as legal notice that the individual currently in possession of this cabin is engaging in unauthorized access of protected property. You are being recorded. All contents inside this residence are being documented for probate review. Any removal of items will be considered theft and submitted as evidence. Sincerely, Talia Green, sole inheritor by verified amendment. Valerie's voice cracked halfway through. Max cursed. Deborah looked around wildly, finally noticing the tiny black dot in the corner of the bookshelf. Camera, another in the hallway mirror, and one more directly above her head. She spun in a slow, panicked circle. She set us up, she hissed. No, Deborah, I woke up. They left the cabin within 6 minutes, empty-handed, silent. But it wasn't over. Later that night, I emailed the footage to the estate lawyer. CC'd Deborah. No subject line, just 2 attachments. The next morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Valerie. Her voice was shaking. Why did you send that letter? She asked. I almost laughed. Because it's the truth. Then she said it. The sentence I didn't see coming. The twist I never thought I'd hear. Talia, you're not the only one she forged a signature for. She did it to Dad, too. Our real dad. Silence. She kept talking, but I didn't hear most of it. Just bits. Power of attorney. 2 years before his stroke. Sold his company. Never told us. I hung up, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel anger. I felt something colder. Deborah's entire life was built on forging control, I just started to uncover how far it went. If you've ever had someone like that in your life, someone who rewrites reality while smiling to your face, please know you're not crazy. You're not weak for falling for it, and you're not alone in fighting your way out. Sometimes we don't need revenge. We just need the truth to hit hard enough that the right people finally stop looking away. 3 days after Valerie called, I filed the official petition to challenge Deborah's control of the estate. With my dad's handwritten letter, the hidden will, the camera footage, and now, a statement from her own daughter, I had more than enough. And the thing is, I didn't want revenge. I wanted the record set straight. I wanted his name and mine to mean what they were supposed to mean. The court hearing lasted 4 hours. Deborah sat there in a gray suit like this was just another brunch she had to suffer through. Max didn't show. Valerie came alone, sat 2 rows behind me, and never looked away. My lawyer laid it out like a cold autopsy. Dates, signatures, video timestamps, proof of coercion. The judge asked one question. Why was this handwritten will never submitted? Deborah blinked, then said, "It must have been misfiled." The courtroom went still. Even the bailiff scoffed. They ruled in my favor that afternoon. Deborah lost access to everything connected to the estate, the cabin, the accounts, the storage unit. I didn't take her house or her car or anything she didn't steal first, but I did send her a letter, just one sentence. He said no, and you did it anyway. She never replied, but the legal community did. Turns out, forging signatures on medical directives and financial documents isn't something you bounce back from, especially not in a small town with old money eyes watching every move. She was asked to step down from the charity board. Her business partners quietly dissolved the interior design firm she co-owned. Her name doesn't get invited to galas anymore. And you know what? That wasn't the best part. The best part was watching Valerie unpack her things in the east wing of the cabin 2 weeks later. No drama, no grand speech, just a soft, "Thanks for letting me stay." We didn't talk much that first week. Still too raw. But on a chilly Thursday morning, she made coffee and joined me on the porch swing. The birch trees were turning gold. The kind of morning where nothing hurts and nothing feels urgent. Valerie looked out across the woods and said quietly, "I think she loved control more than any of us." I nodded. She never really saw people, just pieces on a board. She paused, then added, "I see you now. I didn't before, but I do." That broke something in me, and maybe healed something too. The cabin isn't fancy. The roof still leaks in one corner. The floors creak like they're holding secrets. But it's mine. Ours, maybe. Samantha visits on weekends. Emily sends me recipes from wherever she's stationed now. James drops by with his dog and still talks like a man born in a courtroom. It's not a traditional family, but it's the one that stayed. And that's what matters. Deborah erased my father's signature, thinking she could erase me too. But some bonds don't need ink to be real. They just need someone to remember. What did I learn? Blood doesn't always mean family. And sometimes the truth is the only thing that can set you free. If you've ever had to fight for your voice in your own family, I want to hear your story. Share it in the comments. And if you saw even a piece of yourself in this story, stick around. We've still got a lot left to say to each other.